Welcome. In front of me is a Samsung Galaxy A73 5G, and today I'll go over unboxing along with a quick overview of this phone. Now to get started, let's just flip it over and see if we have any information somewhere. We do have right here, so this is a 256 gigabytes of storage, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and a made in India, and color white, if that wasn't obvious enough. So that's basically all we have for the info right here. So let's pop it open. Unlike the new Samsung S23s, we still have little things to cut right here. The other ones, talking about the S23s, the packaging came with this nice peel tabs. Guess they didn't invest into that right here, but no matter. Let's just pop it open. Here we got whatever that is. I could never figure out what this is actually for, so I'm just gonna throw that to the side. Then we get our phone. Some paperwork, and along with a charging cable. Now the charging cable that Samsung includes is a Type-C to Type-C, as you can see. So you will need to have a charger that is, well, Type-C. So just to kind of showcase one that looks like this. If you don't have one, obviously you probably won't be using this specific cable for it. Now obviously you can use other cables, older ones that had just Type-A to Type-C like this one, and it will charge your phone, well, just as it would normally charge with this one, so not a big of a difference right there. Anyway, just gonna put that to the side. Now we also have some paperwork in here, but let's be honest, no one really cares about that, and that's all we have in our package. So now I'm gonna unwrap this little puppy, and there we go. Let's turn it on. So to quickly go into the screen, which you should be able to see just in a second. This is a 6.7 inch display, 1080p by 2400. It's a Super AMOLED. AMOLED Plus, what they're calling it. Not really sure what the plus is, maybe in refresh rate, because it does have 120 Hz refresh rate and 800 nits, I believe peak brightness that is. Now it also boasts a 87% screen to body ratio with 393 pixels per inch, so that's the density of the pixels. And there we go. Now, as you can see, the bezels here are pretty minimal. We do have a little bit of a bigger bezel at the bottom than we do have at the top, for instance. So they didn't really keep it like super symmetrical. But the bezels themselves are actually like super small anyway. So just to have this right here with me, so I can actually like use it. So let's just see. The bezels we're looking at here are about, at least the bottom one, that's about 1 millimeter. Can get the focus right here. Come on. Oh, there we go. You can see it. Now, the other ones right here on the side are about, actually I think this probably should be counting it from here. It looks like I don't know how to use this. So the other ones were a little bit bigger. This is what would appear to be 3 millimeters, and the other ones were, or at least the bottom one was, uh, 4.5 millimeters. So there we go. Now the top one is a little bit bigger than the side ones as well, but still smaller than the bottom one. Anyway, let's just quickly finish up the setup right here. Now the phone itself, just to kind of go over some features of it, or just like a feel of it while I'm going to the setup. The phone is pretty light. The back is plastic, as you can see, so not the most premium feel at the back. And probably the main star of the show will be the display. So, okay, there's the setup. By default, it looks like, oh no, there we go. At the beginning there wasn't, it wasn't running at 120, but it just shifted to it, so right now it's 120. So you do have automatically 120 Hz refresh rate on the display enabled, or at least after it loads it up. And other than that, the phone actually at the front looks really nice and premium, to be honest. Now, flipping it over, we have a quad camera setup, or at least something that tries to resemble a quad camera setup. I haven't even looked into it, but I can already tell that probably 2 of these cameras are just absolute joke. So the main one on the paper is 108 megapixel wide sensor, PDAF and optical image stabilization. Then second one is a 12 megapixel ultra wide. Then we have a 5 megapixel macro and 5 megapixel depth. Now actually at 5 megapixels these might actually do enough to capture better photos than the 108 megapixel. Now I'm specifically referring to things like macro. Just to kind of explain it a little bit more, phones that include a 2 megapixel macro are almost always going to be outperformed by their main sensor, which for the most part is a 64 megapixel wide sensor. Here we have a 5 megapixel macro, and that is significantly more than double the size of 2 megapixels, obviously. So that should have enough data to actually capture a better macro, higher detail one than the 108 megapixel would at probably 2 times zoom. But you know what? I'm actually gonna check it out, just because I am actually curious about this. So let's see. We will do first 2 times zoom. So this will be using the 108 megapixel sensor. Now it's not actually going to be shooting the photo at 108 megapixels as you might expect. It will be shooting it at, I believe, 64. So it's going to take a photo at high resolution and then bin it down. So combine pixels to make it look sharper at a smaller resolution. So it takes less space but has more detail. There we go. I'm not gonna get closer with this just because obviously this is a main wide sensor, and if I get any closer, actually I can. Never mind. I'm gonna say that. Come on, see how close I actually can get. It looks like that's how close I can get. Okay, so this is my wide sensor at 2 times zoom. At a single, like, no zoom, obviously macro will be significantly better, I assume, but we can do 2 times zoom and basically lose no quality of it, so it gets us closer to compare to macro. And now we can just go into here and select macro. Boom. Tells me to hold your camera 3 to 5 centimeters away from the subject. Now one thing that you'll already see is the image looks a little bit darker, and obviously if I get it even closer it's gonna cast shadow, which is a little bit annoying. So I'm just gonna grab my little light and just literally put it here to get a light onto the whatever I'm gonna be shooting. And there we go. Good enough. So as a comparison, let's see how these came out. So here we got a macro shot. I'm gonna bring it a little bit closer just so you can get a better view of this. This is surprisingly a really good photo for a 5 megapixel macro. You can see there is a lot of detail. This is a respectable macro shot. Now let's look at the come on, flip over in any kind of way, please. Oh, whatever. Oh, there we go. This is the 108 megapixels bent down at 2 times zoom. And just to kind of show this, I think, yeah, in this case, I do have to say macro looks better. Now, in terms of the other 5 megapixel sensor, the what was it? The depth sensor. I think that is something that you will need to test around and see if you like the outcome that it provides you with. So usually the depth sensor will be used in portrait photos. So if you go into your camera, let's see, whoops. Can I like close this? So there we go. You'll have a portrait mode right here. And as you can see, effect strength, this refers to a bokeh. It uses the depth, not depth sensor, yeah, the depth sensor to create a fake bokeh effect. Now, the lower the actual like resolution of the sensor, the crappier the outcome of it is. It usually will struggle with taking photos of people with like messy hair, for instance, where sometimes you might see like a complete halo around the person, where the hair just kind of like goes out of it and it's just complete blur mess, while a little bit below that halo it's fully focused. So if you see such a result, you might want to just stay away from the portrait mode and stick with the photo, which in theory shouldn't really be using the depth sensor. Now anyway, moving on with the phone, at the front we have a 32 megapixel wide sensor. Now with all those cameras at the back, we can shoot at 4K and 30 frames, the highest end, and if you drop down to 1080p you can shoot at 30 and 60 frames with gyro electronic image stabilization. And at the front with the 32 megapixel wide sensor, you can shoot also at 4K 30 or 1080p 30 frames. No mention of 60 at 1080p, unfortunately. Now, moving into the internals of this device. This device is being powered by a Snapdragon 778G, which is a 5G chipset, obviously. Even as you've seen on the box, it is a 5G phone. And we have a couple different versions of this phone. The one that I did have was the 256 and 8 gigs of RAM, if I remember correctly. And yes, I do. But we can have it at a lower spec, so you can get it as low as 128 gigs of storage with 6 gigs of RAM. And the one that I have is basically the highest model. You also have a 128 gigs with 8 gigs of RAM. So not many options right here in terms of storage capacities. Now let's see if we have expandable storage. I presume that we do not, but based on the size of this tray, we actually might. And we do. So even though you have 128 gigs of storage at the base version of it and goes only up to 256, you can pop in an SD card, which is something that you can do with the higher end Galaxy models, and extend the storage probably up to like a terabyte. If not a terabyte, then at least half a terabyte. And I'm pretty sure half a terabyte for majority of the people, that will be sufficient enough to basically get everything that they want onto their phone. And most likely still have enough space left over for just like some other bloatware games, movies and stuff like that. Now, moving on to the last part, which would be the battery right here. We are dealing with a 5000 mAh battery, so pretty big battery right here. Now, as you've seen, we didn't have a charger in the box, and this phone charges at 25 watts, so you should be able to just grab any kind of almost charger that you might have laying around your house, and chances are it will still be charging faster than the capability of this phone, which is good and bad in itself. So good because you can grab any charger and it will be charging at full capability of this phone. Bad because the charging is actually, in my opinion, quite slow. I would expect a phone released in this year to come with at least 30 plus watts charging, not 25. 25 feels like just a cheap knockoff, like a middle finger from Samsung, as it always does. And just to kind of clarify this, I'm not just rugging on this phone just because it's cheap or whatever. I completely shit on this one that costs probably 4 times more, if not even more than that. So this is the Fold 4. And this comes with the same charging speed as this right here. So it's just a joke. Now, luckily, if you ever might be thinking about picking up the Galaxy S23s, which I have lying around here, literally came in not too long ago. These devices, this one comes with a 45 watts charging, so you do have a significantly faster charging speed, but this is the S23 Plus. Same Ultra also comes with 45 watts, but the S23, the Nano Plus version, only has 25 again. Because why have a good charging speed on a flagship device when you can just make it as a higher tier? So yeah, that's a little bit of a annoyance from Samsung. I'm not exactly sure what, I am sure why they're doing it, because money. But it's infuriating, honestly, at this point. It's such a scammy way to sell phones that I just wish that people would kind of like, say enough is enough and just not buy it, but that's not gonna happen, obviously. Now anyway, To finish this off, I'm gonna touch upon a couple additional things. So we have a Type-C charging port at the bottom, speaker grill, which I will do a test just in a second, just so you can hear how that sounds. Then at the top we have our SIM tray, which is a SIM and SD card tray or dual SIM support. On the left side we have literally nothing, and on the right side we have our volume rockers and a power button. And that's about it. And just to kind of mention one more thing, this phone is actually pretty thin. So if I just bring up the S23 Plus, you can see the thickness of this device is significantly higher. And I still have my little measuring thing right here, so I can quickly just like do this. Oop. And we are dealing with 7 millimeters, I think it is, or 8 millimeter thickness. This looks like it's 8 millimeters. Now this is at a thinner side. We also have the camera bump right here. With the camera bump, it's going to be a little bit thicker, probably approaching 1 centimeter. Yep, it's basically 1 centimeter with the camera bump. So there we go. Now finishing this off, the price of this device, which will be the finish basically, comes at about $400 US. Now honestly, for Samsung, $400 for a Snapdragon 778G, I would say it's a pretty decent offer right here. The display right here obviously is the main star of the show, and cameras aren't really slacking too much behind. I'm not exactly sure how well these will perform in like low light scenarios, so that is something that you might need to just check out specific like videos about it, just to figure out if you're planning to get this phone also for like, you know, more advanced camera or photography. Then you might be interested into checking out something that someone else that basically goes into just the cameras and touches upon like how good they are and strictly the cameras. But in general, the phone itself, if I'm just looking at it as a typical Joe that just wants a decent device, it seems to be actually sufficient enough, which is surprising. I usually rag on Samsung just because they either have ludicrous price and not enough that they offer for that price, or they're just absolutely garbage at a reasonable price. This one seems to be actually striking the sweet spot, so it's priced correctly and also has decent value for the money, which, like I said, is surprising. The only downside, like I said, at least for me, the one massive gripe is the charging speed. We're living in it's 2023. It's time to move out of the 25 watt charging world, Samsung, and adapt to a higher ones. There are brands that push charging speeds up to 150 watts, and you're still stuck here at a half a decade ago 25 watts. I know your notes used to explode, but that's your problem, not mine. Fix your shit and provide me with a faster charging, for goodness sake. This is just comical, like how bad the charging speed here is. And I'll also add, I did see some people talk about charging speeds that, Samsung has like 25 watt charging, but it's actually not as bad. Yes, it is. I've been using for half a year my Fold 4, which comes with 25 watt as well, and I went from a phone that charged at, I believe, 30 or 33 watt, which was the Huawei Mate 20 Pro. And moving to this one, it has a smaller battery and also has a slower charging speed. And having my device charged for 2 hours to full is just way too long for me. I want to have my phone, I don't know, plugged in for 10 minutes and charge enough that I can unplug it and comfortably get it through the rest of the day, which with 25 watt charging, 5000 milliamp hour battery, at least on this device it might be possible, just because the battery is so big and the phone isn't as powerful. But if you're running 120 Hz refresh rate on the display, which everybody most likely will because it's enabled by default, you might be running out of this battery a little bit quicker than you might want to. And obviously, because of that, you might also have problems with the device actually lasting you an entire day if you just plug it in for like 10 to 20 minutes when you realize that, I have 10% battery, which is what I come to face plenty of times. And it just needs to, or at least I needed to like readjust what I'm going to be doing or pay more attention to my battery life, which is annoying. I want my device to basically function when I need it and how I need it. I don't want to, just constantly have in the back of my mind that Is my phone charged? Do I need to charge it? It's a little bit annoying kind of thing to have to worry about all the time. Otherwise you will just end up with no phone at all when it dies, obviously. So yeah. Now to finish this off now, like I said, other than the charging speed right here, everything seems to be on par with the value right here, so it's a pretty decent package right here, and I would say that it's a pretty decent phone and I wouldn't mind using it myself. Now, with this being said, if you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.